Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Finding Your Tribe, Surviving and Thriving as a New Practitioner. My name is Amanda, and I'm the Marketing Manager here at AOTA, and I'm going to point out a few things about today's presentation. First, CE. You can earn 1 CE contact hour for each webinar attended during Member Appreciation Week. At the conclusion of the webinar, you will receive an email from AOTA Webcast containing a link to your CE certificate. However, you must stay on for the entire webinar until you view the pop-up screen that says the webinar is now over in order to receive your CE certificate email. You will have through December 31st to obtain your CE certificate. Next, questions. On the left side of your screen, you'll see an Ask a Question box. This is for you to type in questions you may have for our presenters throughout the webinar. Questions will be answered towards the end of the webinar, and the presenters will do their best to answer as many questions as time allows. And last, resources. The PowerPoint presentation for this webinar is available to download and can be found in the Event Resources box located just below the Ask a Question box. Simply click on the pull-down arrow to view the document and download. And with all of that helpful information, let me introduce today's presenters, Katie Slavik, Monique Chabot, Quinn Tyminski, and Amy Beribak. Ladies?
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, Finding Your Tribe, Surviving and Thriving as a New Practitioner. During this webinar, we hope that you will take away some strategies to develop a supportive network of practitioners to help you throughout your career. We also hope that you will be able to identify mentorship opportunities within your desired practice area, as well as articulate and identify existing and desired AOTA resources to support young professionals in their desired practice areas. First, just a bit about our presenters this morning. I am Katie Slavik, and I currently serve as the Sensory Processing and Integration SIS's Young Professionals Coordinator. Some other young professional coordinators along with me today include Amy Beribak, who currently works as the Protective Aging SIS YPC and currently works in home health. Monique Chabot represents our Home and Community Health SIS and currently works in home modifications and geriatrics as well as academia. Last but not least, Quinn Tyminski, who represents our Mental Health SIS Young Professionals and currently works in community-based mental health and homelessness, as well as academia. So, what is a Young Professional Coordinator? We work along with the rest of our SISs to mostly advocate, communicate, and create opportunities for students and young practitioners and young professionals at the dawn of their careers. First, we advocate for you. We advocate for professional development, leadership opportunities, and young professional involvement within the association and beyond. It's also our duty to communicate with you. So our students, our young professional members, our AOTA staff, and our volunteer leadership. And last but not least, I think the funnest thing about our job is that we get to create opportunities. So some of these things include creating conference sessions, informational articles, and networking opportunities. If you guys are interested in becoming a Young Professionals Coordinator later on or have any questions that fit inside these 3 tenets of our role, please don't hesitate to contact us via our email or on Community. You can find our information on the AOTA website by searching Young Professional Coordinator or looking at your specific SIS's webpage. I'm going to toss it to Quinn now to talk more about mentorship.
Good afternoon, everybody. We're so glad you're here. So as Katie said, my name is Quinn, and we're going to start off with a little bit of an evidence-based perspective before we kind of go through the steps of how to find mentorship and all the good things we have planned for you today. So to get you started, obviously, there's a lot of different definitions out there for mentorship. You know, it can be very informal or formal, and we're going to talk about the different types of it. So the definition we're going to use today is the influence, guidance, or direction given by a mentor. So that's kind of what we're going to define mentorship as, and this mentor is going to be a trusted counselor or guide. And I really like that definition of a mentor because I think it really leaves it open for being whatever you need. It doesn't make it something that is necessarily in one setting or another. It really allows for you to define your own version. So as we kind of go through this, it's I think mentorship and mentors is a word that gets tossed around a lot, and we're always wondering, why is this something I need? Is this something I'm going to benefit for? And so we've done some good research and looked at the positive effects experienced by healthcare providers that participated in mentorship. And some of those effects were increased ability to handle leadership positions. They saw greater employee retention in organizations where healthcare providers engaged in mentoring relationships, obviously improved critical thinking, greater networking. So one of the best things about mentorship, in my opinion, is really having this strong network of people that you feel are your tribe, right? And then increased productivity, feeling like you really belong, allows you to feel like you can put in your effort. Further research across disciplines has shown that mentoring is positively effective for behavior, attitude, motivation, and job performance, as well as organizational commitment, career productivity, and success. So really overall, I think what we're talking about today is this sense of belonging, the sense of finding a place where you still feel supported in your career. Continuing on with our evidence-based perspective, we went a little bit outside of T to look at PTs. And we looked at new PTs. Since we're young professionals coordinators, we're really interested in those individuals who are kind of transitioning from a student to practitioner. And so those PTs who had less than 5 years of clinical experience benefited from a mentorship program within their workplace due to an increase in their overall quality as a healthcare practitioner. So they actually saw these students who were transitioning to new practitioners benefit in all of their abilities to provide quality healthcare due to a mentorship program. In addition, we know that this provides an ability to strengthen your professional skills by establishing a connection between individuals of varying career experiences. And so I think that's one of the important things. And when we get down to some of the tips for communicating, we're going to talk a little bit about how varying your mentorship can be really beneficial, and have maybe finding someone who has a different career experience or can provide you with mentorship can be an effective way to kind of be very holistic in your mentorship. An example down here is of 107 tenure-track faculty OTs, 56 had a mentor, which is so a little bit, right about half. And the majority of participants reported that having a mentor was an important or very important contributing factor to their academic success. So for those of you out there who are considering academia someday, and I know as I'm in academia, as is Monique, I can say that having a mentor was probably one of the most defining things for me in my career trajectory. So, and then finally, in the field of medicine, having a mentor who reflects the mentee's gender, culture, and socioeconomic background can help reduce the challenges an individual may experience due to their gender and culture. So like I said, when we get down further, when we talk about selecting your mentor and communicating with your mentor, it's going to become really important to think about who you want to pick and maybe diversify those picks. If you are a minority, would it be helpful to pick a mentor who is also a minority individual who can kind of show you how they navigated maybe difficult terrain? Or do you want to pick someone who is the opposite of you so that you can get a differing perspective? So those are kind of all of the options. So kind of tips for best practices. So the mentor's role in the relationship is to impart their wisdom during times in which the mentee may struggle or face issues. So it's most effective when both parties are fully in. So it is really important that both the mentor and the mentee can communicate effectively and that they establish goals together and they both put equal progress in efforts towards each other's career. I think sometimes we think that being a mentor doesn't benefit you at all, but now that I'm actually in the experience of being a mentor for students of my own, I can say that it is really important that being a mentor can actually catapult your career. You get a lot out of it. I learn more when I'm mentoring students than any other time. Mentees must actively participate in the establishment of their future goals. So you never want your mentor to say, these are my goals for you. Just like you would with a client, it's very client-centered. You want to be able to have that give and take in mentorship and set those goals together. Like I said, it is important to establish a relationship with your mentor to establish a connection based on shared values and interests. So there may be times in your life where you need a mentor on a certain subject, but that may not also be the mentor that mentors you on a different subject. And so it's okay to have multiple mentors in your life as long as you have a connection with that person. And most importantly, the mentor should be enthusiastic and willing to invest their time and energy. So you never want a mentor who's 1 foot out the door. You really want someone who is really excited about your career and really excited about your potential and wants to spend that time with you. And if you're not feeling that, maybe that's not the mentor for you. We're going to talk about some communication strategies next, later, so that we can determine how to discuss this. So I'm actually going to hand off to Amy to talk about different types of mentorship. So take it away, Amy.
Thank you. So as she said, I'm going to be talking about a little bit about types of mentorship. When taking on a mentorship, which could be for learning about specific settings or developing leadership skills to become involved in AOTA in your state level, even in your actual practice setting inside of your office, mentees need to think about which type of mentorship they would prefer. Formal mentorships are often organized by employers or organizations to pair newer, less experienced practitioners with those of experienced status or experts. There's diverse structure to these, but generally they have specific deadlines and goals in mind ahead of time. Mentors are often paired with mentees, but can be paired by request. For example, if I knew that my company was going to be placing me with a formal mentor after I begin working there, and I have some previous connections to the company, I might request to specifically have, let's say, Jane, OT, as my mentor, so that I don't have to do quite as much work to develop the rapport needed in that good mentorship that we just spoke about. Informal mentorships typically develop more naturally. Oftentimes, mentees will actively seek out a mentor, and these could be developed by finding which practitioners in the same office have good experience in the setting, or by using social media resources. One of my first rotations, when I was the only OT on staff, I typically sought out the physical therapist who had worked in that company for over 20 years to guide me navigating through the DME companies, developing rapport with certain physicians and surgeons, and for managing just being in that new area. I've also sought to maintain relationships with some of my fieldwork educators and have used them as resources in developing professionally. I follow some Facebook blogs to discover which OTs posting on the sites would be good resources for development, and I've also reached out to non-OT friends in interesting fields to find out if there are OTs they work with who would be able to answer questions. AOTA has a couple, AOTA has the Commune OT blogs or forums, and they're great resources to develop active members and potential mentors as well. I put in a screenshot of the top header bar on the main AOT website to highlight how to get to Commune OT, just in case people listening aren't completely sure how to navigate the website. You just sign in, click on the top right side of the screen where it says Commune OT, and it's circled in there. And then once in the Commune OT, you can select which special interest section you want to follow. You can set up how you want to be notified of changes or additions to the forums that you like, and then you can add or find people to follow. Additionally, there's specific focused communities of practice within about, I think, 30 or so members who are excellent resources for specific fields like driving, women's health, specific pediatric ones, but I'm not a pediatric OT, so I don't really follow those. I'm not specifically sure which ones there are. There's also specific leadership programs available through AOTA, the state level, and then universities or hospitals. And those are ways to develop professionally in guided pathways with a mentor. AOTA recently stopped the Emerging Leaders Program, but they're in the process of developing a new leadership pathway. Also on the website, so this is under the Education and Careers tab. If you click on the Jobs and Careers resources, you can go to the different leadership programs. They're a little bit further down, and I've tried to highlight a screenshot of that as well. I can't speak for all of the states, but many have some sort of leadership program as well. Being active at the state level allows you to find more local connections who will likely have a good idea of how your practice setting and interests fit within your geographic area. Finally, residency programs are becoming more available, and they're a good way for developing even greater guided experience in specific practice settings. I'm going to now hand it off to Katie, who's going to talk to you about finding, meeting, and working with your mentors.
Thanks, Amy. Now that we know what mentorship is and know a little bit more about the different types of mentorship, let's try to find that mentor and the right one for you. So the first thing that is really important to do before you initiate that mentorship relationship is to first reflect on what you actually want to gain from this relationship. So what skills, what qualities, what attributes do you want to get better at? And then once you discover those things, let's look for these qualities in a mentor. So first, is this person trustworthy? Are you comfortable sharing career information that maybe is a little sensitive, your career goals, your aspirations, your future plans with this person? And do you feel safe that they would not rat you out or make you feel guilty for anything that you want to do? Secondly, do you admire their skills and characteristics? Do you want to be just a little bit like them? Do they have the skills that you want to develop? That's really important. Or do they know someone who has those skills that you could connect with? Thirdly, are they eager? Are they actually excited to help you? Do they want to be just as much of a part of this relationship as you do? As we know, relationships are a two-way street, and mentoring relationships are very delicate, and we're going to learn how to navigate them in just a minute, but we want to make sure before we even initiate that relationship that that mentor is eager and wanting to help you. Lastly, and I think most importantly, are they honest? Are they open? Are they going to give you the advice that you need and not the advice that you want to hear? Are they going to be able to navigate that tough conversation, providing any feedback that may be hard to hear for you in an open and honest way that you can kind of digest and change? Secondly, do you feel honest, open, and honest to them as well? It kind of works back towards that trustworthiness piece. So now that we know how to find the right mentor and the qualities that we want to get from our mentor, let's talk about actually meeting them and actually finding them, right? There's kind of two avenues we can go down. One is deliberate, and the second is spontaneous. So deliberate is typically set up by agencies, organizations, employers, and they typically are paired by a third party based on common goals, insights, and things like that. This is kind of when you go maybe to your manager, your fieldwork educator, or a professor and say, hey, I need help in this area. Do you know anyone who can help me with this? Or a structured mentorship program from AOTA, your state association, or your employer. That's a deliberate mentorship. Then spontaneously meeting your mentor is fun, kind of scary, but can be really beneficial. Typically, this is a found connection that can be found in a whole number of different ways that we're going to talk about next. But these people typically have similar attributes, skills, and goals. All right, so where do I meet this person? It seems really scary and kind of hard, but it's so much easier than you think. We are all occupational therapy practitioners here. We all talk for a living, right? We're all empathetic people that want to help. So step outside your comfort zone and use your networks to help you meet new people. Just ask. We all want to help people, right? That's what we do for a living every day. So we want to help each other. We want to further the profession and grow leaders in this profession to make occupational therapy the best profession it can be. So I also listed a few places that you could possibly meet your mentor. Professional associations. Monique's going to talk about this later, but using your membership as your mentorship, using AOTA, your state association, and any other professional associations that relate to your path as an occupational therapist can help you. At your workplace, is there someone who you work with every day that you admire and you're like, wow, that person is such a rock star OT, I want to be just like them? Ask them. I'm sure they would be more than happy to give you some advice. Also, using your network. OT is such a small profession, and everyone knows somebody who knows somebody, right? Use it to your advantage. Ask around. I'm sure somebody knows an expert in something that you want to grow in. Also, your alma mater. Go back to your undergraduate, graduate, PhD program and say, hey, I need some help here. Who can help me? There's going to be social media areas, or going back to that professor who you've had a really good relationship with and saying, hey, do you know anybody who maybe has graduated a couple years before me that could help me with this? I'm sure they know of someone. Also, social media. I listed a few professional social media sites like LinkedIn, Community, but hey, we all follow a million awesome occupational therapy blogs, things like that on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Sliding into their DMs is totally cool, right? If they blog about someone who's like your OT superhero, DM them and say, hey, I love what you did. Help me do this. This is amazing. Also, conferences. There's a million networking opportunities at conference, be it AOTA, your state association, or any other professional organization. Everyone's there to chat and to learn more. So totally go for it and start that and initiate that conversation. So once we found our mentor, initiating the relationship is really important. We want to make sure that we come prepared. Reflect on your goals for this partnership and then collaborate with your mentor on clear professional goals for your relationship right as you get started. That's going to help your relationship, go towards being the most successful it can be. Also, putting your best foot forward, making sure you come to that first meeting prepared, on time, professionally dressed. So now that you've met your mentor, found that person, Quinn is going to talk about communicating with your mentor and making that relationship blossom.
All right, thanks, Katie. Okay, so yeah, I think we're going down the path here. So we've met our person, and now we have to communicate with them. So the thing I'm going to tell you is that you have to get to know them. Similar to saying I love you too soon, forcing a mentorship can be very uncomfortable. So you have to allow it to blossom naturally. And I think one of the best ways to do this is to just, like Katie was saying, if you do slide into someone's DMs or if you do send them an email or something like that and say, hey, I love what you do, help me do it, invite them to coffee. I love to do this. I say, hey, would you let me buy you a cup of coffee? And very often that turns into a discussion of projects we want to do or collaborations we want to happen. And then it kind of just develops into a relationship. I think one of the nicest things to do is actually tell someone that you're wanting them to be your mentor, and people are usually very flattered by that. But being able to say, hey, we have been having a really great relationship. I really value who you are as a practitioner, or I value, the journey you've had, and I was wondering if you'd be willing to mentor me. And then sometimes that allows both parties to really understand what's happening and what's coming up. The next is to understand that both people are humans. So you can't expect your mentor to be a superhero all the time. Clearly you very much value them, but we don't want them to be on a pedestal. We really want to understand that there are going to be conflicts and there's going to be disagreements in the mentorship. You won't always agree with every single thing that they say, and that's perfectly acceptable. What worked for them may not always work for you, but the idea that you can have that discussion means that you have a good mentor, that person is someone that you can say, respectfully, I disagree with you, and I don't think that that's something that's going to help me. Maybe you have some other options for me. Don't be afraid to pilot test your mentorship. So just because you've asked someone to be your mentor doesn't necessarily mean that you 100% have to go through with it. You may find after a month or two that maybe this person their heart really isn't in it, or you guys just don't have a communication style that jives, and that's okay. It's okay to say, hey, we tried this, and I always appreciate your time and your effort, but I think that for right now, maybe we can just, check in occasionally. So similar to the intentional relationship model, which I'm sure a lot of you learned in school, it is the mentee's job to maintain the relationship. So just like in the intentional relationship model, where it's the OT's job to maintain the relationship, it is your job as the mentee to maintain it. So that mentor is definitely doing you a service. They're allowing you to learn from them, and so it's your job to be the one that's setting up meetings. And it can be really helpful to set up a schedule beforehand and say, hey, what if it works for you if we meet once a month at this time or at this place? So a little story, when I met my first OT mentor, I was incredibly fortunate. She actually was the OT that was leaving the job that I was coming into. And if you know a little bit about community-based mental health, it can be very lonely, many a times you're the only OT, maybe in the whole agency. And she was going through an academic position, and she offered to sit down with me and discuss some treatment planning. And we actually created a plan, and we ended up sitting down every Friday at 8 a.m. for an entire year. And we would just have coffee and breakfast, and I would talk to her about the clients I was seeing and the troubles I was having with maybe evaluation or assessment or just the agency as a whole. And it was a really wonderful experience, but it happened because we set that plan to meet every Friday for a year. And so we just both put it on our calendars and knew that we would be there. So like I said earlier, also exploring gender and cultural differences in mentorship styles can be really important. So do you want to be mentored by someone who is the same gender as you or someone who is different? Do you want someone who has had a similar culture, like I was saying earlier? Do you want someone who's maybe also a minority if you're a minority so that you can kind of learn from their journey? Or do you want someone who maybe hasn't had the same trials as you have so that you can learn some different perspective? So some of the evidence we found is actually that females are more likely to want to continue the relationship and have demonstrated to be more communicative in the actual relationship. So it can be really important that you think about, do I want a very communicative mentor? Do I want one that only responds when I ask questions? Things like that. So let's talk a little bit about boundaries. Boundaries are both necessary and a hindrance. I think this was something that I really struggled with when I was being mentored, is I never quite knew where that boundary was and what I could communicate with my mentor about. Was my personal life on the table? Was it not? Sometimes it did interact with work in terms of if you're having a rough week at home, sometimes that can contribute to a rough week at work. And so maybe you need to have that discussion with your mentor about, what are our boundaries? Can I talk to you about these things or not? But just so that you guys know, personal struggle can be a great learning tool. So if you are having troubles, allowing that mentor to help you work through them can be a really great way for you guys to kind of create a relationship. We talked a little bit about establishing a routine already, but also establishing a routine within your meetings. So knowing we are going to talk about this first, or these are the things I want you to bring. I actually used to get homework assignments from my mentor. So she would say, okay, I know you're working on this project and I really want you to bring an article next week that supports that, or I notice you've been struggling with picking evaluations, and so I want you to do some research and create a small evidence table to show me what you're going to pick, or even I want you to go talk to someone. And so those are really nice ways to kind of create benchmarks for ourselves. This next one's very difficult. Ask for regular and constructive feedback. So I know we all hate asking for feedback. It can be very uncomfortable. However, it's the best way we're going to learn. And so very often this person who you've chosen that because you admire, getting feedback from them can be very scary, but it's going to be the best feedback you got because it's someone who has been in your situation. And as we said, you picked a mentor who's someone who really cares about you. So they're only going to give you feedback that you really need and not unnecessary feedback. And like I said, look for potential areas where you can benefit your mentor. So they're doing you a big favor. So anytime you can do a project together, speak in a class for them, write a paper with them, or connect them to someone is always really beneficial. So here's some sample questions for you to ask of your mentor. We've talked about a few of these already. But what style of communication works best for you? So that can be about oral communication, meaning like when you're in your in-person meetings, or it could be about how should I contact you? Do you prefer text, phone calls, emails? Is there a certain time of day I shouldn't call you? We talked a little bit about what type of routine works best for you. And then what areas are you most able or interested in mentoring me in? It's really important. Oh, no. Can you hear me?
We can hear you just fine.
Okay, sorry. So what areas are you interested in, most able to mentor me in? So like I was saying earlier, there may be places where one person is a really strong mentor and someone else is not as strong. And so you may need to have different mentors. So for example, if you're working in a certain area, you may say, I really want to learn about this diagnosis. And so for that, I'm going to get maybe an MD mentor or a PT mentor, but I really also want to learn about this occupation-based technique. So for that, I need an OT mentor. And so really understanding why you might need to differentiate your mentors. For me, I had a mentor who was really, really strong in my practice area. And then I had a mentor who was really, really strong in networking. And so I balanced those two to create a network and also to learn about my practice area. So one mentor is not always the best option. So also another question is, tell me about your journey to your current position. So this can be really interesting to hear about how they got to where they are so that you can learn about what you need to do. Other questions, what resources may be helpful to me? Hopefully they're providing you those already. And lastly, do you know of anyone else who may be beneficial for me to talk to? So like I said, you don't necessarily have to have just one mentor. So your mentor has a vast network of people, as Katie was saying, and use them to meet other people. Okay, the last thing I want to talk about is this CRAM's 4 stages of mentorship. I think this will give you guys a bit of an idea of how mentorship develops. So there's 4 stages. You can see the time frames for each stage is there. The first stage is initiation. It's a short period of time defined by CRAM as 6 months to a year where a mentoring relationship starts. This stage is increasingly important to both the client and the mentor because it's where the expectations of the relationship are realized. So this is kind of where you're deciding how you're going to work. You're asking all those questions I just suggested. And then after a year, you're going to move into phase 2, which is cultivation. Lasts approximately 2 to 5 years. This is where optimum benefits from the relationship are gained, and they apply to both the mentee and the mentor. And there are increased opportunities to meet, and the meetings become more progressively useful. So this is really the meat and potatoes of your mentorship experience. This is really where you are gaining the most value from this relationship. Stage 3 is separation. This stage is described as being reached where there's a big change to the structure of the relationship or to the emotional side of the relationship. The important thing to know is it's inevitable. This is going to happen. At some point, the mentee will outgrow the relationship, and success will be realized when the learning objectives have been achieved or most of the learning has taken place. So there will be a point where you've progressed and you are kind of on a similar playing field as your mentor. And hopefully this is just where you will recognize that you do not need this relationship in its current form. So finally, the last stage is redefinition. So this is where the relationship between you and your mentor will change. They will either be a close friend or you will just kind of go separate ways. So basically redefining what it is that your relationship means to one another. Excuse me, both people, we need time to adjust to their new roles. And anything from the original mentorship will kind of fall away, and so the new roles will be resumed. So I'm now going to pass it off to Monique to talk a little bit about using your resources to create mentorship.
All right, thank you, Quinn. People have been alluding throughout this webinar to the various resources that are available to us through our National and State Association memberships. And so you see here on the slide that I have put together a comparison of what AOTA and your individual state association might have to offer. You can see that some of the things are fairly similar, including access to continuing education, links and possibilities to network with people who have similar interests to you, and advocacy on your behalf for the entire profession, be it at the national or state level. There's also various leadership opportunities that are available both at the national and state levels as well. AOTA in particular gives us access to webinars such as this and other kinds of online continuing education in addition to the conference and other kinds of workshops, subscriptions to various literature that you could use to advance your own practice and find people who might be looking into things that you're interested in, and also access to the community and special interest sections, which is one of the best ways to reach any one of us on this call as a young professional coordinator. You also, believe it or not, have access to a whole website called OT Job Link, where you can look for job postings and also information on how to get your resume ready and prepare for interviews, etc. And there's membership discounts, which I will say have come in handy many times in my own life. We did have an emerging leadership program coming through AOTA, and there are other leadership opportunities that will be coming out in the near future through our National Association. A good portion of us in the, at least in the Young Professionals Coordinators, went through this program, and there are people that we've met through there who are mentors for us to this very day. With the state associations, one of the perks of a state association is that you do get introduced to a much smaller group of people. It's a much more intimate setting, for lack of a better word. The state conferences are smaller, but just as busy and wonderful. And you actually get a chance to meet people who are interested in the things that you're interested in, who actually might be living in your community, or at least in your state. I'm going to talk about Pennsylvania for a few minutes just because that's where I'm located currently, but we actually have district meetings. So on top of the bigger state conference, there's smaller district meetings that happen where it really turns into just the people who are within a certain locality where everyone can get together and meet. And actually, we have a networking event set for this very month where that's the whole purpose of the event. There are also professional development and leadership opportunities available to serve your state or local district. And by being part of boards and task forces and conference committees, et cetera, you'll get a chance to meet other people who might be able to help you out. Often there's scholarship opportunities. And many state associations now also run their own emerging leader type programs that would match you with someone, a clinician who's already working in an area in your state that you can actually meet and work with and develop a relationship. So definitely make sure that you check out everything that AOTA and your state associations have to offer you. We also, we've been talking about how you meet mentors. On top of networking at conferences and workshops and meetings, you can get involved with interest groups such as your special interest section or multiple special interest sections if you have many interests, different boards and task forces. For students, I know there's also an assembly of student delegates that all get together at conference, and they also have various roles to play with an AOTA and a chance to meet other people. There's lots of activity on social media with different kinds of groups talking in addition to community. And again, those leadership programs. But also I want to encourage you to think about not only going to conference, but presenting at conference. I've actually met some of my favorite people and mentors from me presenting something that I came up with as an intervention in the field. Someone else at AOTA thought it was a good idea, did peer review. I got to present, and people were coming up to see my work, introducing themselves, and it started into a great relationship from there. So you take that risk, take the jumps, present at state and national conferences. You never know who you're going to meet. So I put out in this infographic a whole bunch of different ways that you can get into some of these communities. So in terms of online communities, there is Community, which we've been mentioning, which is a huge chat board, social media site for all of us, where we can go on and you can ask any questions that you want. Reach out to the young professional coordinators, other people in the special interest section. I think you'll find that clinicians are very eager and happy to hop on and provide you suggestions and feedback when you ask a question within that network, especially when we know that you're a student or a new graduate. Very, very welcoming community. There's an entire new practitioners page on aota.org that has other kinds of readings and resources and links to other information all in one place for you. So make sure you go and check that out. And then, of course, OT Job Link. We talked about the leadership programs with AOTA and the State Association leadership programs, but there's also fellowship programs. So if you're interested in really concentrating your practice in one area or another, you should go on AOTA's website, look up the fellowship programs, and get yourself into one of those. And you'll actually get linked with advanced practice in those areas. And then there's also a mentoring guide on NBCOT. So the NBCOT is not just the final exam to make sure you become a clinician. There's a huge resource in there, a PDF on mentoring. And then finally, we have various publications that go out. There's a weekly newsletter, the OT Student Pulse. And if you're not already aware of it, you should sign up for it because it has great resources for you. And then also OT practice articles come out on student and new graduate related topics. Actually, the batch of us just had one that came out in the one, I believe if it hasn't come out in the mail yet, it's coming out sometime next week. But we have an entire article on how to choose the right first job for you, a whole bunch of us young professional coordinators. So definitely take a look through OT practice and see what topics are there for you. And with that, I'm going to pass it on to Katie for the conclusion.
Awesome. Thank you, Monique. So in conclusion, we wanted to just kind of highlight the top 5 points that we wanted to really drive home to all of you this afternoon. So first, we have mentorship equals success. As Quinn talked about in her first portion of the presentation, we saw that when someone engages in a successful and positive mentoring relationship, we see that their career really takes off. So being able to take advantage of any opportunities that you have in the beginning, middle, or end of your career to engage yourself in a mentoring relationship, being as a mentee or a mentor, we're going to find some awesome success with that as well. Second, knowing your type, kind of reflecting over everything you want to learn and grow from during this mentoring relationship, and reflecting on what type of person you're going to mesh the best with and really have that awesome relationship with is going to be really important for your success in your career and in a mentoring relationship. Also, using your network to find mentoring opportunities, finding those people in those key areas of your life to help you advance to that next goal or next step in your career can be really important. Fourth, developing your relationship, going through those different stages that Quinn talked about, and making sure that that relationship is the best that it can be, really cultivating it and fostering it so it is super positive and you both get a lot out of things. And lastly, as Monique chatted about, using your membership as mentorship and taking advantage of the plethora of resources and programs and events that all of your associations have for you is going to be key for your success as an occupational therapist. So with that, we want to say thank you so much for listening and tuning in today for our webinar. We're so happy that you're here. And if you guys have any other questions, we'll be doing a little bit of a Q&A here next. If you have any further questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to any of your young professional coordinators. All of our information is online on the AOTA website. And again, thank you so much. We're going to hand it off back to Amanda to do our Q&A.
Hey guys, if you just want to go down the list and answer any questions out loud, and then and feel free to all chime in and answer how you see fit.
Sure. So let's, the first question we have today is from Lauren, and her question is, do you have any suggestions for mentorship through Fieldwork Level 2? And yes, we do. First of all, I would love to point you to a couple of great resources. There's some really good fieldwork information in the Students tab from on AOTA's website, and kind of talks about how to foster your relationship with your educators. And if you guys want to do mentorship outside of that, I would probably go through your alma mater or your school program that you have now, and maybe ask a trusted professor or even friend if they know any people who graduated a few years above you. So you can kind of navigate, and they went through that fieldwork experience pretty recently. So I would try to reach out to them and then kind of connect with them in any way you can. Hope that answers it. So question number 2 is...
Sorry, I was just about to get to that, and my phone wasn't unmuting. So number 2, is there a specific thread on Commune OT that students or new practitioners are utilizing to discuss entering the career, negotiating salary, etc.? Currently on Commune OT, one of the threads or one of the communities under just the all communities is the students tab, or the students thread or student community. There's a lot of discussion at this point. I believe that the Assembly of Student Delegates kind of views all of that thread, as well as just random professionals that go through it. And they typically answer questions for students. However, I don't know specifically if there is anything directly about negotiating salary, discussing entering different careers. Hopefully that makes sense.
And if there isn't a thread on there already, we highly encourage you to start one, because I'm sure you're not the only one with those questions.
I'll go ahead.
I'll move on to
the
next question. All right, move on to the next question. It's from Corey, who's an OTA, and was wondering if you suggest having a mentor who is also a COTA, or would an OTR be okay? Honestly, as an OTR, have had mentors who were COTAs who were just phenomenal clinicians, and I learned so much from them, and I think vice versa. So it doesn't really seem to matter if the person has the same credentials as you or different credentials, as long as they have the expertise and knowledge that you're looking for and you're able to start a relationship.
All right. So I'll take the next one. So the next one's from Alexandra. And Alexandra asked, how do you not take constructive feedback to heart? How do you remind yourself as a new practitioner that you are new to the field and it's okay not to know everything? I think that's a really great question, Alexandra, and I think it's something that a lot of students struggle with, and it was myself included when I was a new practitioner. So I think that one of the best things to tell yourself is it is okay to not know everything, and I actually had a fieldwork coordinator or a fieldwork educator tell me that one of my best qualities was that I know that I don't know everything. And I think that a lot of people really appreciate that. They like when people ask questions. And so in terms of like it being okay to not know everything, that is totally fine. They expect that as a new practitioner, you will ask questions and you will learn. Taking feedback is very difficult. And I think that, and people have told me this my whole life, that you have to separate your abilities as a new practitioner from who you are as a human being. And that's really hard to do. But I think the idea is taking what someone says and picking apart what's useful. And so taking what someone says and saying, okay, these are the things that I think I can work on based on what they say, even if they didn't say it in the nicest way possible, and saying these are the things that maybe I already know that I know how to do, or that I'm just going to continue to hone my skills. So I think it can be really difficult, but the more that you think about it in a logical manner, the easier it is to take the emotions out of it. And that's one of the most important things, is take your emotions out of it and just be able to think, what did they actually say? Did they say I needed to work on interventions? Did they say I needed to work on my safety with transfers? Maybe those are the things that I actually need to work on.
All right, so I will take the next one. Are you all, the young professional coordinators, planning a session or social at conference for new practitioners or students to work with one another? And that's from Julia. Thanks for the question. At this point, we're still kind of thinking things over. We love the idea of being able to do something like that. But we're going to be meeting tomorrow with all of the YPCs, and we're going to just try to figure out what we're going to do. So stay tuned on the social tab of Commune OT. I keep calling it OT Connections. So stay tuned on that tab. There's also, we wanted to point out the social networking event, which is usually, I believe, the Wednesday evening of conference. And that's just the SIS sections. You can always come as students, you can come as professionals. And then the other thing we wanted to point out is just looking at the conference guide for all of the networking events, as well as all of the sessions that are going to be happening.
I think while we're deciding who's going to take the next one, I'll go ahead and talk about one. So this question is from Kathleen. Kathleen asked, how do you address conflict with a mentor? Is it ever appropriate to fire your mentor, and how would you go about that in a professional manner? That's a good question. So in terms of conflict, we always want to be very professional about it. We really want to allow that mentor, like, to understand that they've got something going on in their life. And so you may need to say, like, hey, can we talk about our last week's session when you said these things? I'm really feeling like that was really hurtful, or I really disagree with you and I wanted to talk about it. I think one of the worst things that you could do for conflict is ignore it. And that is true of pretty much every aspect of our lives, but also in a relationship with your mentor. Of course, you want to use appropriate statements, like everything that you would learn in a communication class, which I happen to teach. So anything that would be like I feel statements, or, you know, really having this person understand that maybe it's not what they said, but it's the way you interpreted it. Personally, I'm a huge Brené Brown fan. And so one of the things that Brené Brown says is that we all make up stories in our head based on what other people are saying. And so they may have said something that they didn't mean a certain way. And you may say, the story I'm making up in my head is that you said I'm a bad OT. But really what they said was, well, no, I just said that I wanted you to work on this skill. So it is super also appropriate to fire your mentor, and that's okay. I mentioned it a little during the talk, but I think it would be okay to say, you know, I realize that maybe this relationship isn't working out for either of us. So I think it may be best if we just meet occasionally, or if we just kind of stop this relationship. And I think that's appropriate. You have to do what's right for you. You can do it in email. Of course, it is always better to do in person. But I don't think that person will take any offense to it. In many cases, they have very busy lives, and they'll probably be a little relieved to not have to do that. But hopefully you'll have a mentor who would say, can you tell me why? What did I do wrong? And then you'll get a chance to really explain that situation. But you won't know until you try. But always know that you have to do what's right for you.
All right, great. So I was going to answer a question from Molly about how would an older clinician who has not worked directly as an occupational therapist for a number of years go forward in seeking a mentor? And I'm going to answer this assuming that this clinician wants to go back into the OT field. And that's how I'm reading it, at least, so I apologize if that's not the intention. But I think my best advice would be to reach out to the OT commune OT community, because there's a lot of very active people who have been working in different settings for a good number of years with specialty certifications and expertise running around through there. And they're often very eager to help people come back into the field or really talk about different areas. So I guess first step would be figuring out where you want to go back into, and then going on those special boards and seeing if that there's someone in the greater OT community who can supplement with more information, more specialized information. Alternatively, sometimes you might find that the local university communities might have someone who is willing to work that way, or even I would go to the state associations as well and start going to some of the district meetings and becoming involved that way and meeting others in your area who are doing what you'd like to get back into. So I hope that answers your question. And we'll move on to the next one.
We have sorry, go ahead.
So the next question is, how can I try to connect to a mentor while searching for work after graduation? And I think this is a great question. I think a lot of OTs feel kind of lost in that transition, and a mentor would be really helpful for that kind of time. So I'm thinking going through your school, going through the student tab on Commune OT could also be really beneficial. And also going through your special interest section of looking for, in the special interest section of which you're interested in. So if you're interested in a rehab job, going through the rehab and disability SIS, to look for someone there. Hopefully that answers it. We can move on to the next one.
Okay.
All right, so quality.
Good. Go ahead.
All right, so moving on to talking about the qualities that make for a good mentee. I like how we talked about what makes a good mentee, but any advice for the other party. So yes, this is so important, and so important to talk about when you're becoming a mentee and doing that first relationship. So some qualities that come to mind right away is accountability. Doing the little things that your mentor is requesting or having you do, and doing them well. I think also having really positive and prompt communication, showing that you're energized and eager to have this relationship, not letting an email sit in your in-basket for a couple days before you respond, things like that. Also being forward-thinking but also reflective. So thinking forward and forming good goals and asking good questions to develop those goals, and then also following through on those goals and making good concrete steps to get those goals in between your meetings with your mentor so you have something to go back to. Also being in general helpful. If they're doing a project that you are really interested in, offering some assistance to do that, because typically people who you admire in the field have a lot going on, so being helpful in that way. Does anybody else have any other qualities that they can think of that would be beneficial?
No, I think you hit them, but I would reiterate what I said earlier about not knowing that you know everything, and just really allowing that mentor to guide you in whatever way you need to. You don't have to put on a face for them, and that's one of the most important things in a relationship with your mentor, is that you feel comfortable with somebody that you can do that with. Anyone up next?
Okay, there's a question from Meredith about recommendations for resources or mentor opportunities for OT students with physical and psychiatric disabilities. I'm going to take that as physical and or psychiatric disabilities. But at this point, I don't know anything specific on AOTA resources. However, there are a few OT Facebook groups and Twitter sites or Twitter personalities that are people in OT that have either physical or psychiatric disabilities. And if you wanted to ask me about that, this is Amy, you can send me an email about that specifically. I have to ask them ahead of time if it's okay if I put their name out, so I don't want to put it out to start with without asking their permission about it. But go ahead and shoot me an email. It's on the AOTA website, and I will get that answer to you later.
We want to move on to question 26.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that one.
Same here. So the question, next question was about best practice to maintain a relationship with a mentor over months or years, and whether or not it's better to meet in person or would virtual communication be sufficient. And actually, it's funny that you asked that, because I just had that experience recently myself where as an emerging leader, there was a mentor of mine through the program that I never met face-to-face. I worked with her, I guess, almost 7 years ago now, and I have never met this woman face-to-face. All of our communication was on the phone or through email. And I actually met her for the first time in person at a conference that we happened to both be at, just because she saw my name and wanted to finally meet me. And I can completely attest to the fact that our relationship did not suffer one bit in terms of mentorship or communication, whatever it was, by being 100% virtual. And this was before all the FaceTime and Skype and Zoom technologies are really available to this day. So I think with that, it is possible to have a relationship that's completely virtual. I think what's important more than anything is just to make sure you guys have clear guidelines on the kinds of communication that works for you, and like frequency of communication, and if you wanted to use Zoom or not. So I would not necessarily rule out being in person or virtual. It really just depends also on what works best for you. Some people prefer in person, some people are okay with virtual, so you can kind of play with it. But I've had positive experiences on both ends. And we can move on to the next question.
I wanted to jump off of this question because it works perfectly with two of our questions that came in from Hannah and Marissa. And one of them was about maintaining a relationship from afar. And then the other question is about travel OT and forums specifically catered to the field and how to go about finding mentors. So in this case, we had a really great jumping point using all of the technology available, Skype, Zoom, Google Documents, things like that, where you don't actually have to be in person with someone. And then for the travel therapy, there's a number of therapy websites and travel therapy Facebook groups. And the only reason I know about them is I used to be a travel therapist before I became a home health OT in Illinois. And there's a myriad of opportunities on social media to find groups and mentorship for either OTs or just therapists in general through online communities.
All right, everyone. Well, we want to thank you all for, again, attending our webinar today. And again, if you guys have any further questions or want to dive deeper into any of the questions that we already answered or any of the content that we presented today, please feel free to go ahead and contact any of your young professional coordinators. We are more than happy to assist you all in your endeavors and your beginning of your careers. Also, if you guys have any ideas for things that could help you all more in any area of being a young professional or new OT, we would love to hear them. So please, please send us an email and let us know. Again, thank you guys so much, and we appreciate all that you do. Thank you.